Good morning, YouTube. How is everybody today? I hope everyone is well. I'll just sit here for a few minutes whilst y'all filter in. I'm sure there's huge crowds of you waiting. And indeed wait for YouTube to catch up. We're live. Cool. Just checking everything's looking good over here. All right. So today we are going to be looking at Blitz in a little bit more detail than the components we were looking at last week. So we'll start on the home page here. So Blitz pulls together the three components that we looked at last week. If you haven't seen part one and you don't feel comfortable with what Next.js and Prisma and React Query bring to the table, this will still make sense, but it might be worth jumping back and just seeing which of those tasks are being carried out by which of those tools. Good morning, Alex. How are you doing on this rather miserable day here in Norwich? Norfolk Developers is predominantly based in Norwich, although we have an ever-widening field of influence, it seems, which is great. There's lots of new faces showing up now and then, which is good to see. If you're here today, feel free to give us a wave in the chat. Let me know if any of the sound is off or the music's too loud. I went for the epic playlist today instead of the ambient playlist because, well, because it's epic, as you can hear. So if it's a bit loud, it's going to be louder because it's not ambient. It's very much war drums and horns and things. Yeah, the music is extremely epic. So we'll see how we go with that, but let me know if it's problematic at any point. I've listened to that ambient playlist far too many times now, so let's give epic a go. Other choices include happy, which might be good. Upbeat, which is probably not going to suit my mood. Holiday, no idea what that means. Hype, which is probably going to be a bit extreme for live coding. EDM, which might be interesting. Chiptune is probably going to be a bit annoying. Epic, which is what I went for. Chill, which might be worth trying if this is too heavy. And rock, which I haven't tried, so we'll see. Anyway, that's enough. Oh look, I can't grab it. Look, can't move it now. There we go. Fun times. Alright, let's get started then, shall we? I've installed the latest Blitz CLI. +1 for EDM, says Alex. Yep. Well, perhaps we'll give it a try. We'll do 30 minutes with each of those four potentially interesting ones. So, I've installed Blitz globally. You can probably see the command. We're at version 0.24.1, which came out in the last week, probably last few days. And it had quite a few breaking changes. So the nature of using alpha software is that things tend to change and get broken quite quickly. Excuse me, something in my eye. But it does warn us. I mean, it doesn't say on the page here anymore, but it does warn us when we do the install that it's alpha software and things are likely to change and that we should expect that. So I suppose I should caveat some of this with the fact that it is alpha software, and perhaps I wouldn't recommend using it for critical production projects at this point. Having said that, it does seem pretty reliable in general, particularly because it's built on some solid or increasingly solid tooling. But it does still change quickly. So if you're writing mountains of code, you might want to hesitate and hold off on that until version 1 is released. But anyway, that's enough chatting on from me. I won't run npm install again because I've already run it once today or yesterday. So we will, now we've got our global Blitz command, we will create a new app. So we'll call it new app nor dev Blitz, to follow the pattern of nor dev next that we did last week. Now the first thing we get asked is pick a form library. Blitz is one of the reasons I really like Blitz is because it, not just because it brings together some already solid tools in the community, but that it doesn't really enforce any of the decisions it makes on you, which I think is important. Whilst they provide a nice easy path to getting quickly up and started, the framework itself doesn't actually care about which pieces you actually pull together. Like, you don't even have to use Prisma, simply because you can just not call Prisma functions in your queries and mutations, which is quite refreshing because you don't feel like you've been pushed down a particular path. You can still make your own decisions. And because it's prompted us to choose a form library, Blitz will, it comes with, the templates come with versions of the generators for each of these libraries. So we're going to go with final form just because that's the recommended and probably best supported version. But I have taken quite a liking to React Hook form in the past. So that's a perfectly legitimate choice too. I used to use Formit, now I choose one of these two. So we're going to choose React Final Form and hit on to the next step. Whoa, what just happened? Look at that. So we ran our new command. It told us that we're using alpha software, just to make sure that's clear again. We picked React Final Form and then it said, okay, hang tight while we set up your new Blitz app. And it generated a ton of files for us. And we'll go and have a look at what those are in a few minutes. So it's retrieving those dependencies from npm. Blitz tends to use yarn, I think, so from this point out we'll also use yarn just to avoid having to regenerate a lock file for npm. So it's fetching the packages, linking the dependencies, building fresh packages. I'm not sure what step that includes in the regular yarn output, but we'll just go with it. And committing our app. So it's created a bunch of stuff for us and initialized a Git repository and committed the first version of the app. And then, ooh, look, initializing the SQLite database has failed. So we'll have to go and have a look at what's up with that in a second. So we'll just follow these instructions. cd nor dev. In fact, let me center this so you can see a little bit better. Open up Streamlabs so I can see chat. We'll go to nor dev blitz and we'll have a look at the directories in there. Let me put that at the top. Okay, I deleted the command it told us to run, but it did say Blitz DB migrate. But first, let's open this up in our code editor and have a quick look at what we'll be migrating. So if I go here, get rid of that, you'll see that this is the default schema.prisma file that Blitz supplies us with. The top here is very similar to what we looked at last week when we set up Prisma from scratch. This is the generator that generates our JavaScript client for accessing the database. And these are the two models that Blitz creates for us. So you can see here we've got a user and we've got a session, and a user can have a list of sessions that is associated with their user. So this is fairly straightforward and basic stuff for creating a user system in the database. So you can see we've got the created at and updated dates, the name, the email, hashed password, the basic role of the user. You can see that defaults to just being user, and a list of sessions. And a session has a bit of information about the user, some security tokens, and some session data buckets, effectively. which, because they're a string, I'm assuming are just stringified blobs of JSON. Okay, cool. So you'll remember from last time that we had to run a few commands to get things running with Prisma. In this case, Blitz has wrapped these for us. So we can use the Blitz command line tool to run the migrations, and that will actually both do the migration save command as well as run the migrate up command. So let's just call the Blitz DB migrate now. Let's see how that goes. So the name of migration will say add user and session. That will run the migration, generate the client for us. So you can see here that it's initialized the database with the settings that we gave it, users and session, ran the migrations here to create table statements, which were obviously user and session, and then generated the Prisma client, and then given us the message we can now start using this in our code. How cool is that? All right, so now apparently we can just run blitz start, and we should be able to launch the app. Let's see what happens. All right, so it says the server started on port 3000. So I'm going to open that up in Firefox. All right, your app is ready, including user sign up and login. To add a new model to your app, run the following in your terminal. Blitz generate all project name string, then Blitz DB migrate, then restart the server and go to projects. Interesting. Okay, cool. So I'm going to do that, but I'm also going to stop the server first so I can run the commands. I'm going to change the name of project to product, and I'll explain the reason for that in a little while. So Blitz generate all product name string. Run. Okay, what did that do? So it's created a model for product, for a thing called product with the basic ID, created at, updated at, and the name string that we specified at the end of the command there. Interesting. And it's created a whole bunch more files for us. That's interesting as well. Okay. Let me blitz start again, and then we'll go and have a look at what's going on here. Right, so we'll get our app running over there, pop that on the left there so we can see what's going on. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click this sign up button, and then we're going to go and try and sign up and see what happens. So test@test.com is my email address. And password is my password, and oh look, we're in. User ID is 1, user role is user, and we've got a big logout button here now. That's pretty cool. Okay, interesting. And if we go over to our editor and open up the sidebar, not only do we have our new migration information here with all of the changes about the user and the session that we added, but now, presumably, no, we don't have a migration for the project. That's interesting. Let's have a look in the schema. Did it make it? Pretty sure it did. Yes, it did. Ah, that's saved. Let's stop this again. Okay, look, there's all the stuff. So Blitz DB migrate, and this will be adding the product to the database schema. Okay, there we go. So you can see that when I saved it, it swapped the order of events in these two, because the default example doesn't match what Prisma extension wants it to be anymore. But actually that's an immaterial change there really, so it won't make any difference. Okay, cool, but the main important action here is that it added the product schema to the database. So if we scoot over here and have a look at where our database file is stored, it'll be in our env. Do we have an env.local file? Yes, we do. It'll be in db.SQLite. There we go. So let's reveal that in the Finder. And I'm going to double click it. And look, here's our table. So we've got a user, and there's the test user I signed up a minute ago. And we've got a session. Presumably we've also got a session attached to that user that I logged in with when I registered. And we've got an empty product table here as well. So that's pretty nifty, isn't it? Cool. So straight away, we're straight in there. We've got all our tables in there. The model's created at a basic level. We've got our user stuff. We're ready to go. How exciting. So we've also now got a seeds file, which is a new thing. We didn't have this till recently. So good to see Blitz is setting us up with a nice, easy way to add a bunch of test data for running tests against and things like that. So the final step over here on those instructions, it says, and then go to project. So I named it products. So let's see if we can just go to /products. Oh no, we can't because the server isn't running. But if we run the server, would that work? Do we expect that to work? I kind of do expect that to work, actually. Let that bounce up and we'll run it again. Oh, it's getting epic now. Goodness. Alright, so we've got a screen here with a create product link and some grayed out previous and next buttons. Interesting. And over here we can see we've got a get products query being run. Interesting. Okay, what's going on there? Ooh. So we will create product. So put your form fields here, but for now just click submit. Okay, submit. So you can't see that because it's tiny, but it says success created with the name my name. Okay. Okay, so here's product 1, ID 1, name my name. Let's go and see if there's, okay, so here's the list of products. There's my name. Visit that. Can we edit it? We can. So for now, just click submit. Okay, submit. That says success again. Cool. Back to the products list. My new name. So it edited it. Let's create another one. Submit. Okay. Seems like it's created another one. Oh no, there's 2 now. Create another one. Just 3 for good measure. Always feels good to do things in 3s. There we go. Back to products. Cool. So let's edit that 3rd one. Submit. Okay. Back to products. Cool, so we've got 3 products now. Let's just have a look. They all appeared in the database. They did. That's cool, isn't it? So we've got a custom model in the database and we're writing to it from the UI in 2 commands. That's kind of powerful stuff right there, isn't it? That was quick. That didn't take long at all. Nice. So how do we get back to the home page? Okay, we need to add some navigation and stuff. But let's just go back in. We're still logged in. Cool. Well, that was fun. Let's go and have a look at some of the other stuff then. So that's the initial setup process that Blitz takes us through. It's like, here's how to set up your project, add a model of your choosing to begin the custom build of your app, and then go and check out some of the generated code. So let's go and have a look at what we get in our default Blitz project. So I'm going to collapse all the folders. I'm going to close all the editors. We're starting from a nice, fresh, empty project. And in fact, I'm going to open up the terminal and I'm going to commit adding product model and all of the stuff, all the things. So now is probably a good time to talk about what's happening here. So I've just done a commit with my changes, and Husky has triggered a pre-commit hook. What's a pre-commit hook, you might wonder? Well, you might not. You might use these all the time. But if you are wondering, it basically just gives us a way to run tasks before allowing the commit to be made. So this is useful. In this case, it's running think. Let's have a look in the package.json. This is defined. So Husky pre-commit hook here. So it's running the TypeScript compiler, which will compile all the TypeScript and thus flag up any errors where TypeScript types are incorrect. It then runs lint staged, which is a way to run ESLint on only the files that have changed since the last commit. So that allows it to not have to check every project file. Like if you've got a massive project with thousands of files, you probably don't need to check every file if you've only modified 5 or 6 of them. So that will ESLint all of your changed files in this release, and then pretty quick will run prettier on those files that have changed as well. And where possible, those two should try to correct any mistakes if they can, otherwise they'll fail and inform you that you need to go and fix these things. This prevents you being able to commit code that's not linted and not run through prettier, which can lead to, well, at the very least, commit messages where you say, oh, ran the linter, fixed linting issues, fixed prettier issues, that kind of thing. So with some Husky pre-commit hooks, we simply enforce that we don't ever mistakenly commit code that isn't going to pass our build process or our continuous integration checks. You can obviously easily disable those if you want, but in most cases they are quite useful. One downside is it prevents you from being able to easily push up saved incomplete work if you get to the end of the day and you really need to rush off and you can't even got time to fix all the issues. This could be an issue in that case, but those times hopefully are rare. Anyway, rambling about these things. So everything was awesome. It didn't find any issues in those files, which you would hope because they were all generated for us. And then the commit was made. So we don't currently have a repository for this. So I'm just going to quickly spin over to GitHub and spin up a new repository for this project, just so that we are all consistent. Right, so let me zoom in a little so you can see what I'm up to. We'll call this, to fit the pattern, nor dev blitz again. I'll leave it public and I'll create the repo. It is quite epic, this music now, isn't it? Goodness me. Goodness me. Right, so git remote add origin to that repo. And and we're going to git check out the main just because now's the easiest time to do it, and it's a small change to help people feel more included. Push origin main. And you'll see, node binary used for scripts. Oh no, we're going to run into problems now, aren't we? Interesting. Wow, this is pretty much EDM, right? This music. Okay, why is that not working then? Probably not a problem with NPM. I have not seen this before. Weird. Is it because it's now using it? Did I use NPM and I should have used yarn? No, doesn't look like it. So pre-push, run lint, run tests. The tests actually might be failing. No tests found, run Jest. Okay, yeah, so I think this is just a warning. We don't need to worry about that for now. The no tests found thing, actually I ran into, there's an issue on the Blitz repo for this, but let's just see. I did find a fix, which I think the issue actually was with these mocks. So if I just uncomment these, in fact, let's just get rid of all this, and we will expect true to be true, the ephemeral test of nothing. Oops. And we will remove broken test, and we might have to go and have a quick look at what the Jest test path pattern is. In fact, I'm going to go and check the GitHub issue because I just posted the solution last night. or the workaround. It's not a solution. I didn't fix the problem, I just found a way to avoid it. Okay, let's have a quick look. Tests. This one's a bit more pleasant. Where is it? Tests broken? It was open, so perhaps I should just not remove the filters. Clear current search and filters. Tests. Maybe they fixed it already and closed it already. They are pretty quick at these things. Can I sort these by ones that I've posted in? Recently updated? It was like 12 hours ago or something I posted it. Perhaps they fixed it already. Maybe a comment doesn't count as an update. Hang on, let me just go and look in my... In fact... I'll go and look in my... Brave history. It's probably in there. Ta-da. Yeah, default Jest test not being found is what it's called. So, default Jest test. Should find it. No, it doesn't find it. Okay, I'm going to copy the issue over from there. This one. And there's me. I fixed it down here. Let's copy that. Right, here we go. So I'm just going to modify this test runner to include this run tests by path, which just says run all the tests with .test in the file name that are in the app directory, basically. So now I'm going to fix temporary test command. Go away, warning. Okay, so pre-commit check's going to run. And now I'm going to push origin main, and with a bit of luck, it's going to work now while I refill my coffee. Yes, it found the test, it skipped the test, pushed to the branch, we're all good. Cool, so one test was skipped. So we did not assert that true equal to true, so I'm just going to go and make sure that that is the case. And that something strange hasn't happened, so let me just run test. Oh, now I'm going to start using yarn because otherwise we're going to get lock file issues. Let's just check the test passes. It does. True does equal true, so things aren't as crazy as they seem just yet, which is a good thing. So do that. Commit this to do not skip the only test. Okay. Cool, so we've got those basics in place. Testing works, we can push that up to the Git repo, and we're in business. So let's close all the group editor windows, let's collapse everything in the sidebar, let's watch that finish and minimize it, and we'll go and have a look at our Blitz project. You should be subscribed to the issue. Oh yeah, fair point, Alex. Yeah, fair point. I should have just looked at my notifications, although that would give away potentially all my work ones as well, so I was a bit hesitant to do that. But anyway, so the anatomy of a Blitz app. I almost did the we're an hour in thing again at 9 o'clock, but no, we're half an hour in, which interestingly, like clockwork, is time to for a refill of the coffee. I'm going to take the hit of one mouthful of cold in order to maximize the heat of the top up. So one of the cool things about any of these project setup scripts, whether that's Create React App or Next.js, one of the reasons that they're so successful and popular is because they genuinely save you significant amounts of time getting all of the usual configuration and things that you need in a project setup. So you remember last week we loaded up a Next.js app from scratch. We just ran npm init, npm install React, React DOM, and Next, and that was it. We had those, just a handful of files in the project, and that's really cool to get up and running, get started. But of course, with most actual long-running projects that aren't just, things that you're mucking about with for learning purposes, you often need to set up a lot of tooling infrastructure, especially because we're working with JavaScript. This is true in lots of languages as well, and most frameworks set up lots of this stuff. Most frameworks will give you a way to run your tests. They'll give you a way to check your code, to do all sorts of things. And in TypeScript, JavaScript land, there's a lot of popular standard tools that everyone's using these days that help us keep a check on things. And with dynamic languages, that helps quite a bit. So we just have a look at the directory structure here. You can see that the app folder here is what contains all of our app code. This is similar to what you might do in Next.js, where you have a pages directory here. We've got Next.js's custom app that's already set up for us with error boundaries and error displays and all sorts, access control, check errors and stuff. These is kind of global permission handling stuff. And the custom document that handles the rendering, which includes the lang attribute, which I've always have to add to the next examples. Basic 404 component, the basic test that we were just editing. Let's change that because that's now incorrect. Expect true to be true. And our index page, the very first pre-generated page that we were looking at with the instructions on how to create our first model. So this pages directory here is very much the same as what you would have in any Next.js app. It's the same thing. These domain level apps, well, actually there's a mix of apps here. So Hooks is a top level generic Hooks app that might be shared through all of your modules. Components is the same thing. So a form component would probably be shared through all of your modules, as would your text field be shared through all of your forms. So there's a global level components directory and a global level hooks directory for common shared code. But then there's also the users directory, which contains code only specific to users, and in this case we've got just a query to get the current user using the session ID, which we'll look at. And we've also here got this products folder. Now when we created our products command way back up here, where is it, that created this model, so it was up here somewhere. I don't even know if I can go all the way back to it, but it was on the home page, wasn't it? So over here, this command. So when we ran that, we changed project to product, and that generated everything in this directory. And now inside products, for the product domain related code, we've got a product form, which doesn't use our global form. Interesting, I think it used to. We've got mutations, which are our server functions for creating data in the database with Prisma. DB in this instance is Prisma. So we've got a create, a delete, and an update mutation in the directory there. We've got pages as well. Now this is all the pages that are associated with what we were doing in products earlier on. So if we go back to /products, if I can type products here, see we've got our 3 products listed. We've got the create product page, which is appearing at products/new. If we go back to products, we can go and look at an individual one, which will be at product/ID. So you can see how they start to match up. The product ID is this one. Here's the individual page which hooks up the delete action button and the edit link to the form and that sort of thing. And so what Blitz is doing, this is one of the first things other than project setup that Blitz really brings to the table, is it allows us to better organize and separate our code by domain. By domain I mean by model, effectively, by related. So all of this code in this products folder will relate to the products entity. So the forms to add, create, list, so whether that's all the pages you want or all of the mutations and queries to get it and modify it, all appear under this nested products directory. So rather than having a top level components where there's all kinds of components and then a top level hooks where there's all kinds of hooks and top level queries where there's all the queries together, we actually separate them out, put them in separate directories, so that if you're dealing with products stuff, you can be pretty sure that most of it will be in here, in the products directory, or at least there'll be a jumping off point into the shared code from this directory. So you never have to go hunting through a big list of files with every component in the app, wondering where the product edit form is, for example. Next doesn't allow us to do that out of the box. You can only have one pages directory, whereas Blitz allows us to separate them out. And then during the build step, it consolidates them all into a pages directory that works with Next, effectively. So Blitz doesn't actually do anything with these at runtime. It pre-compiles them already into the directory structure that Next uses. So it's just a compile step to use for organization. Of course, you don't have to do that if you wanted to. There's actually, there is an argument to be made, and I find it quite useful as my top level pages directory effectively being my root list. I can see all of the roots in the app in the top level pages directory, and I do find that quite useful. Whereas in this case, I would be hunting potentially for some of the roots. But again, because Blitz sets you up with smart defaults but doesn't tie your hands, you could just ignore that and put everything in the top level directories, and Blitz would be like, okay, it's up to you, do what you want. If there's nothing in the domain level folders, then it'll just let you get on with it as you want. And I'll probably say that a few times throughout this. This is one of the great things about Blitz, is it sets you up to get going really quickly, as you've seen, but it doesn't tie your hands behind your back at any point, or at least I haven't found that so far. We'll see. So I'm just going to turn off notifications because they're talking about mushroom coffee in the Discord. Which would be a bit distracting to start now. This isn't mushroom coffee, although this would make for an interesting stream. For sure. Right. So you can see that we've got our pages, we've got an edit, we've got the index root to list them all out. That's got basic pagination, although this is all JavaScript based pagination, so you might not want to use these methods for product pages that you want indexed by search engines, but we'll get to that later. The final folder in this domain level directory is the get roots. So you can see here it's just a Prisma call to go into the product model and find the first one where the ID probably that you pass in matches. So we can go to, for example, the page to list an individual product item. and we'll see it will load that query here, get product. We'll get the product ID from the URL. Excuse me. And then we will pass that to a use query with get product, where we pass in the ID. And that's how we do. I think this is going to autocomplete now. Yes, it does. Nice, they fixed that. That's cool. So the ID is just, yeah, product ID. Nice. So that's the domain level product directory. We've looked at the users one. The DB directory is just the Prisma folder that we had from the original Prisma initialization process. The only difference here is we've got this index file, which looks like it's doing some... Should the Prisma instance is reused during hot reloading, otherwise a new client will be created on every reload. Okay, so that's just doing some dev related tricks to make Prisma probably a bit faster. And a C's file that's going to let us say, okay, we could loop through a make 5 test projects, so that we're always starting with 5 projects in the database so that we can run some tests, for example. So that's cool. So that's the database. And integration's empty. It's for future use, I believe. Test. Just got some setup to add. So this is another one of the cool things that Jest sets up. So you saw earlier that it pre-installed Jest and made it so that we could run yarn test to run our test suite. It set up an initial test just to make sure that that worked. Although that's broken in the current release, I'm sure it will be fixed shortly. It also adds React testing library, or in this case the Jest.js testing library, which extends expect to include lots of really useful additional checks, like perhaps we'll write some tests later and have a look. But the cool thing is we don't have to set this all up ourselves, and we'll drop into the Jest config briefly when we get down into the project level stuff. We've got our environment level files for setting up our database URL. If we deploy this again to Vercel, when we've got Blitz app running, we'll flip this back to a database on DigitalOcean again. We've got a ESLint config that Blitz has set up for us with a bunch of useful defaults. Blitz likes to use all the new and shiny stuff because it's still alpha. It's not even version 1 yet, so using all the new stuff to make sure that that works, I think, is the plan. So ES 2020 is enabled. Use the default React app ESLint rules and add the JSX accessibility recommendations on top, which is good news, and it doesn't solve all your accessibility issues, but it's a good start to make sure that you're warned about the really low-hanging fruit that you don't want to be messing up. So that's always good to know. Sets up basic git ignore stuff with all the usuals. Bunch of common stuff in there which save you having to edit it, including DS store, which is always really annoying when you open up Finder for the first time on a project and accidentally commit the Mac Finder database store. RPM, npm rc, so save exact. So this is worth knowing actually. When you install things with npm, I'm not sure about yarn, but certainly with npm, it will install the latest release and it will use the caret symbol before every dependency like this. Every dependency will have this caret ahead of it. And what that will do is when they release, in this case 5.11.5, it means that this will actually install that version. It means that it will just use the latest patch release version. And that sounds fine, because in Semver, a patch release is supposed to only fix issues or fix bugs, unexpected things. The middle one here, I can't remember the name of it, the minor version, is incremented when new features are added, but not breaking changes, supposedly. And the major version increment is supposed to be modified when there are breaking changes. Some people are better at adhering to this than others, and sometimes patch fixes can inadvertently introduce new bugs. So you might have found that 5.11.4 worked just fine, and then there was an issue in a part of the code that you don't use, and a patch release 0.5 was hastily issued really quickly, and your next deployment that you run your tests against in continuous integration gets a different version of the dependency than you ran locally. And you haven't realized, because you haven't run npm install locally, because there haven't been any dependency changes, you haven't intentionally upgraded anything. So now you're in a situation where your tests will pass locally on your machine, but fail on continuous integration. You won't really understand why. But after some investigation, you will realize it's because this hat symbol that's default included in every npm install command has actually resulted in a patch release that introduced a new bug that's now meaning your code doesn't work properly as expected. So I've been bitten with this many times actually over the years, where I've spent hours, potentially even days sometimes, trying to understand what an issue is, and it's come down to a minor release, a patch release of a package that introduced a bug that means my tests no longer pass on different systems. Anyway, so all of that is to say, this npm-rc config file with save exact true in it is what's meaning that these all have explicit numbers. They don't allow any caret. There's no flexibility. They say, I use this version, I've tested it with this version, please continue always to use this exact version until I change my mind. And that is, in my opinion, should certainly be the default. So thanks for setting that up, Blitz, that's great. Prettier ignore just means that we won't run prettier reformatting on a bunch of files that don't play well. Babel config just sets up Babel, and there's not much going on here, but it's nice to know it's there, so that if you did want to add some stuff, you could. It just runs the basic next Babel stuff. Not much to worry about there until you need it. The Blitz config is fairly minimal, but this is where we would have access to the Webpack config if we needed to do any custom Webpack configuration, which we sometimes do. One of the big differentiators between Next.js and Create React App is that Next.js allows this easy access and modification of the Webpack configuration, whereas Create React App doesn't, deliberately doesn't. I think it's a design philosophy choice, and at times probably a smart one, because it means you know what the build process is doing, and you don't get 1,000 issues with 1,000 different problems because people have modified the Webpack config in their own special way. So the important thing here in a default Blitz setup is that this is where you define global middleware. I'm not sure how I feel about this. It seems like it might be nicer separated out into its own place so it doesn't feel part of the configuration, because middleware doesn't feel like config to me. But in this case, it does make sense because it's very global. Obviously, you need to have your session data available. And what the session middleware does is it makes the user session available both to your React components with the use session hook, or the use current user hook, and in mutations and queries with the get current user functions, or the context. This puts the user on the session context that is passed to all of your queries and mutations. And we'll have a look at that in a minute, because that explanation probably didn't make the slightest bit of sense. So this is the Jest config, which is the cause of the tests being broken on initial run. Interestingly, the config I can't figure out what's wrong with the config. I did a diff on a working Jest run, and the debug config there was no difference. The only difference was what this run tests by path argument adds. which made it work. So yeah, that was weird. But anyway, so that, the Jest config is perhaps one of the most complex bits of the whole thing. Jest isn't normally this hard to set up, but once you start using TypeScript and all of the other stuff, it could get a bit messy. I don't know what any of this is doing, and I wouldn't want to configure this myself. I mean, I haven't had to do all of this stuff in my other projects where I use Jest, but since Blitz has sorted this out for us, we'll assume it's useful and be grateful for them dealing with it instead of us. And you'll see it sets up a coverage report as well. So is there a coverage command in our there is not. So let's just see as a test if that will work. So we should just be able to copy this, put that in there, and oops. Can I just do coverage? npm run test. Oops. Run. Oh no. Yarn test coverage. There we go. That's a no. Did I break it? Do. Hey Hamza, welcome back. Good to see you. How you doing? Hope you're having a good afternoon. What's wrong with that? Oh, it needs a comma. Don't know why that keeps logging up as invalid prettier definition. Did that do? Oh, I didn't run the coverage one. See if the coverage report works. It does. Cool. And we are not testing any code, so there's no coverage whatsoever, but we can see that that's available if we need it, which is cool. Awesome. Okay, so that's the basic complex Jest setup, but that's the most complex file in the project, I think, really, that we have to deal with. Other than package, which actually we don't have to deal with most of that either. Sets up lint staged, sets up Husky for us, which we saw, sets up the prettier defaults. If Chris Dunbirch is watching later, this is where you can turn on semicolons. Again, Blitz makes the choice that we don't use semicolons because there's only a few rare cases where you actually need them. But if you like me, they do feel like a bit of a nice safe blanket. So turn them on here if you like. The README, we won't worry about that. Basic TS config is normal config. The types.ts file sets us up with some global stuff that is new. Allows us to add custom stuff to the Blitz context, which we could then add on to in middleware, as you can imagine, in the Blitz middleware. Oh look, it has session middleware, which I don't think I can get to the code for that easily from here, but you can imagine how that would work. The session is here with the session context. The middleware will add the session onto the session context, and this just makes sure that TypeScript knows what a session context is, and it has a user ID and some data, and then obviously we've got an authenticated session context for if we are logged in. Joined in lunch break. Oh, nice. Yeah, I'm glad that it works out like that for you. I don't think it works out that well for people in the UK, unfortunately, because I guess they've all got to go to work now, but never mind. I'm sure they'll tune in later. Alright, so that's we've basically looked at every file, more or less, that comes with a default Blitz app. As you can see, there's quite a bit to it, but actually there's not that much to it as well. We didn't really look in this auth directory, so this is probably worth taking a quick look at. So we used the functionality here earlier. We've got a sign up page, so you can see if we visit the sign up page, we render a sign up form in our page layout. So let's go and have a look at the login form. That's over here in our auth components login form, and it renders a form. with a couple of label text fields. That's simple enough. We'll have a look at that later on. And sign up form, which is the same form, just with slightly different on submit. So we run the sign up mutation instead of the login mutation. Surprise, surprise, who would have thought? Those mutations are here. So authenticate the user and then create the session and then send them back the details about the user. Log out, revoke the session, simple enough. Sign up, slightly more involved. We'll pass the user's input, hash the password, and with an auth util, we're going to have a look at the basics of that. So using secure password to hash the password, and also a function to verify the password. Basic stuff that we need to do some of that stuff. So as you can see, like, none of this code is hidden away from you. Some of it's generated up front because you don't really want to have to write. You need this in nearly every project with a user system. You don't want to have to write this every time. Rolling your own user authentication can be a risky business, especially if you need to, if there's any security considerations for the app. Now again, Blitz is alpha software. So if your app has security considerations, perhaps it's not the one for you right now, but the code for the authentication system was reviewed by someone quite well known in the authentication field. I think actually they may have worked for auth0 at one point, although I may have made that up. Either way, the person who has reviewed all of the code for this their main job is in authentication for web applications, so they're probably better at it than I am. That's what I'm saying. So Brandon making a shout out for pen testers. Right, yeah, exactly. So we've got a fairly solid implementation that's been reviewed by someone who knows what they're doing, but of course that doesn't mean it's free of errors. But the fact that it's a well-known project and that requests for pen testers are being requested, one would hope that it will get checked out, problems will be found, and we can rely on the fact that it will over time become probably more secure than our own implementation would, because we won't have that sort of oversight. So yeah, open source for the win. But as you can see, whilst it sets us all up and makes sure that we don't need to do all of this ourselves and don't make any mistakes, it also doesn't hide it away from us. We can jump in here, and if there was a reason that we wanted to change something here, we can. None of the code, there's no magic really, there's no secrets, nothing's hidden away, it's all set up and made available to the developer, which is empowering, I think. So we're in the auth directory, we've looked at all of those, there's the auth utils, here's the basic validation. Now, Blitz also ships with Zod, which is a validation library, and we use this for validating form inputs, basically. Now, one of the differences where TypeScript falls down in comparison to a language like Java or Kotlin, for example, is that our type definitions can't really be used at runtime to validate user input, which is a shame, because it means that we have to do this extra work. So we already know that our email is going to be a string, and we already know that our password is going to be a string, and if we had these constraints on our database field, Prisma would know, and the Prisma type might even know, although I'm not sure if that's true, that there are constraints on it. Unfortunately, we also have to do an extra level of validation here. So whereas in Java, any input that came in, Java would say that's not a valid user input, sign up input. TypeScript would not do that. TypeScript doesn't exist for all intents and purposes at runtime. So that's where Zod comes in. And because for the sign up input fields, we expect an email and a password, we define a Zod object here. We use the Zod functions to basically set up some basic validation. And then when the user submits the form, we can use this to validate. Now the cool thing is, if we go and look at the sign up form here, this schema, this input, sign up input here, is passed to the schema as a schema to the form, which will be used on the client side to do client-side validation and show the user errors like please enter a valid email address and that type of thing. But then it's also used on here on the client side to check that the input on the server matches those validation rules as well. So this is, I guess this is where you could say the code sharing of using TypeScript on the front end and the back end, having the same language throughout the code base, starts to come in useful. Because we only have to define those syntax, those object validations a single time, and then we can use them in the form to show the user useful messages so that they can understand what they've inputted incorrectly. But we can use those exact definitions to validate that on the server, and there's no duplication and there's no difference between the two. Like one example in my day job, this was a long time ago now, but one example that came up was the UI was validating password length to be a minimum of 6 characters or 8 characters, whereas the server was enforcing required 10 characters. So although the user form would become valid once the password had 8 characters, and it looked like the user had correctly filled in the form, once they hit submit and submitted the data, the server would run the validations on the server side and say, sorry, your password isn't long enough, the password needs to be longer. That's a fail from me. But then the user would fail to log in and they wouldn't necessarily know why, because the form validation errors just didn't show the same issue. So you can imagine how if your validations are defined in one place and you can use them on the client and on the server in the same way, there'll never be any discrepancies. Which sounds pretty good to me. So, oh, sorry, that was really near the mic, so excuse the squeaks. I'm topping up my coffee one more time. If you hadn't guessed, I am somewhat of a caffeine addict, but well, we're working on it. But I guess you can always justify an addiction when you've got a reason like I need caffeine in order to do a good live stream. But there be dragons as well, so those sorts of justifications, I think, are perhaps the hallmark of addiction, and that's yeah, that's what caffeine will do. Anyway, this is not Coffee Drinkers Anonymous, so let's crack on. We're an hour in now, so we're about halfway. It's probably about time we started building something, right? Let me just see. I did make a few notes about what I intended to talk about here, so we were talking about that. Yeah, we're on. We should be good. So that's a lot of looking at what Blitz set up for us and talking a lot about packages and pre-configured code, and that might be a bit overwhelming, but it's always useful to just kind of explore the lay of the land so that we know what's going on, that sort of thing. So there's one more cool Blitz feature that I'd like to just quickly demo. And I'm just going to make sure that the app's running. I'm going to head back to the home page, and I'm going to go into the index root, and I'm going to delete all of the stuff that's in there, the default stuff that we don't really want. I'm going to leave the user info thing. I'm going to get rid of all of this that we don't need, and that we don't need, and the footer that we don't need, and all the styling that we also don't need. Alright, let's check that still works. Okay, cool. So we've got the ability to log out, we've got the ability to sign up. Can we log in? Let's just check my test user works before I check if I've broken it. Log in. We are logged in. So now we've just got empty page that checks our user session and displays our user info. Cool. So that's fairly simple, and that works nicely. So Blitz has begun implementing what they refer to as recipes. Now I'm just going to stop the server because it can sometimes get a bit hectic when you run these. So it makes changes to the code base. So I'm going to clear this so you can see what's going on. And I'm going to run blitz install Tailwind. So Blitz has a concept called recipes. And what a recipe does is basically in a scenario where you may not want to use where you may want to use one library over another, or there is no definitive solution. It depends on the circumstance or the context of what you're doing. You don't want everything bundled in the project right at the beginning, and you don't want too many opinionated decisions being made, like installing things like Tailwind up front, so then you've got to spend ages removing a bunch of stuff. What I just removed in the index file is about as much deleting as you really want to be doing in any project, right? So recipes are to the rescue to allow us to set up common packages that require a bit of boilerplate and configuration without having to do the boilerplate or configuration. So this is a recipe written and supported by Adam Marcon. I'm guessing his name is Adam Marcon, marcon.codes. So thanks for that, Adam. And what it's going to do is install Tailwind. So this is I'm going to hit enter and let it start doing its thing. So it's going to add some shiny new dependencies. It's going to install Tailwind, and it's going to install post CSS preset environment, which is the thing to rip out all of the Tailwind classes that we don't use. None of this is especially difficult to set up, but it does take 4 or 5 commands to get everything up and running, and you have to create a config file and run all the stuff. Hey Simon, how's it going? Good to see you, man. Thanks for stopping by. Is that the rock? Is that emoji for rock hands? I saw that Discord uses that as "I love you" hand, which sometimes people do by mistake. I don't think they mean "I love you," but it's nice of them to say. Uh-oh. The recipe is broken. Oh, Blitz, what have you done? That's a shame. This worked last night, but looks like someone's broken the recipe. Ah, gutted. Okay, oh, should I take a gamble? And let's go and have a look. Let's check the repo. Okay, well, that's a little bit annoying, but we can get... perhaps we'll skip the Tailwind stuff and save it for next week. Let's go and see if there is an issue about this. Let's see if there's a closed issue about this. We can install Canary to fix it. Opting into the upcoming breaking changes in Tailwind. No. Recipes fail on your Ubuntu server. No. So this, unfortunately, is the nature of using alpha software. No. Okay, I'm just going to quickly search up the issue. What's the first part of the error? Text string must be rendered inside text component. So I'm assuming this is part of the which one do I want? That one. I'm going to wrap that in quotes. Ink, yeah. So Ink is a library that is used for creating the CLI prompts, basically, using React. So the CLI is done with React components. Sounds crazy, I know, but that's how it's done. And it looks like there's a bug in the latest one. In the latest Blitz recipe, that means this isn't going to install, which is a shame. It might set up the defaults, but it's not going to do the code mods for us, which is unfortunate, because that's pretty cool when it does that. Okay, so I'm going to hit enter and that's going to fail. How unfortunate. I'm tempted to see if the Blitz Canary release, Blitz.js install Canary release. Can I just do @canary? I think maybe I can just do @canary. Okay, let's check the release versioning. Oh look, 7 hours ago. So since I did do it last night. So let's take a gamble and do install global blitz at version 0.24.2 and see if that fixes our ink issue. Come on, fingers crossed. Because it is really nice when they work. What were you guys doing last night? So Simon says he just woke up. Simon says he just woke up. Sorry, Simon. And Alex says, not surprised, we were up late. Aha. I, of course, was in bed early like a very good boy because I needed to be chipper for this morning's live stream. So that might amuse some of you. This is me being chipper. There we are. Right, let's try that one more time, and if it fails, we will skip Tailwind today and move on to something else. Come on, Tailwind, you can do it. One more try. Go for it. Oh, looks like it might be working. No, it was the next step that fails, wasn't it? It's the next step that fails. So this is the Tailwind. You just do blitz install Tailwind and it should configure all the stuff, but it looks like they broke it in the last release, which is really annoying. I might actually just downgrade to the previous release, run the recipe and then upgrade again, just because I like to live dangerously. What was I on before? So that broke a bunch of stuff. Let's go back to there's always a moment on stream where you think this is a bad idea. So I'm going to downgrade Blitz to this version and run the recipe. Launch of the new iPhone launch, eh? Cool. Yeah, so Alex, the Tailwind thing is just a Blitz recipe. So when it works, you just run blitz install Tailwind. It installs the dependencies, downloads the dependencies, adds the post CSS config, adds the Tailwind config, and adds the CSS code mods of the file to add the imports, and does all the setup basically with some clever code mod stuff. Unfortunately, it looks like it's broken in the last release, so I'm just taking a bit of a gamble and downgrading to the last release because I did want to set up a basic frame for the app, because I do tend to work UI first in many cases, especially when I'm kind of winging it as I go. But this is not making my CPU very happy. But it's hanging in there just about. So the Blitz plan for recipes is that you'll be able to just run Blitz install Tailwind, Blitz install Chakra UI, Blitz install any package that you use basically that requires a bunch of setup, and it'll just sort it out for you, get you up and running, save you having to muck about copy and pasting config, copy and pasting imports that you don't really need to memorize. And I'll stop playing with my head. Oh geez, looks like I might have made it worse. Did I make it worse? Looks like I might have made it worse. Error, SHA-256 of binaries, Prisma is all wrong. Interesting. Alright, so Blitz, let's try it. This is going to fail too now, isn't it? Install Tailwind. And if this fails, we'll abandon it and go elsewhere. Oh wow, we made it worse. Okay. Enter to install. Hi, here's a page full of errors. Yeah, cannot find React. Like, okay, sounds bad to me. Everything's fine. Yeah, just ignore that. Hope for the best. Run the command. I'm going to run the install and move up again in a minute. It's a shame this is broken because when it works, it's beautiful. And the crazy thing is, I did it last night, just to check, but I maybe didn't. So for the last sort of 10-15 minutes, we've just been mucking about with. Oh, there's the squeak again. I'm just kind of pouring the coffee because I haven't got anything else to do. But to be honest, I've had my fill now. Nope, still broken. Okay. Well, we'll run Blitz up to the... Oh, wait. That's not going to work. That's probably why. Whoops. So the downgraded one isn't going to work because I didn't install it globally, which was very foolish. So now I may have messed up the project by installing a bunch of stuff locally. So now I might have to trash my node modules and run npm install again. And in fact, npm install will have messed everything up because it will have, it should be yarn. Blitz uses yarn by default. So the meme, if someone could repost that meme, everything is fine. Yeah, you'd be right. So I'm going to, do you know what? I've learnt the hard way that if you muck about with yarn and npm, your best bet is just yeah, obliterate the world. And let's check that I didn't end up with a bunch of stuff in my package JSON I don't want. Looks like I did. No, I did not. No packages, no packages. TypeScript's okay. Test render was upgraded. Posted as that's okay, that's okay. These have been changed, I think, because I installed Blitz locally. So let's... Okay, we'll ignore the coverage command I added for now. Let's just revert that. We'll revert that because that's going to delete it because we don't want that. We want the yarn lock. And I will run yarn. Hopefully we'll be back where we want to be without too much chaos. Why is no space around link tag when it's rendered on browser? By default, HTML keeps space character. When you log out, you see login, register, no space between words. I don't believe HTML keeps one space character. I think if you put two anchor tags next to each other, they would do the same thing. They wouldn't have a space. HTML doesn't keep one space. Unless, yeah, no, not between HTML elements. Does it? I mean, maybe not if there's a tailwind reset. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so now then, let's just check the project still runs. Okay, I guess I never see that because I very rarely render them out without touching them. Having said that, we've got it here. Let's go to here. So maybe is it just because if they're in line, they're not going to be in line. They're just, I mean, they are yeah, it won't do them inline. They'll just be default static or whatever it is. Yeah. Oh no, they are inline. Element inline. Yeah, what? Not something I see very often. Cool, so that worked. Let's see if now we can install Tailwind. And if this fails, game over. We'll go and do something else. Enter. This is what, the third, fourth time we tried this? Install the depths. One more enter. Big fail because there's a problem. And then I probably need to upgrade Blitz again because all my generated code is the new version. Right, moment of truth, ready? Nah, god damn it. That is really, really frustrating. Okay. Don't use npm. No, use npm for the global install Blitz at 24.2. Right, let that run. We will go and do something else. It's not going to run because it's not running. Okay. That's disappointing because we could have made it look nice, but never mind. That was part of the next part of the stream, but we'll go back to data and do some models and we'll do UI stuff next time. No problemo. Right then, I'm going to quickly go and look up something in here. Dun, 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 dun. So, we were talking about the app we were going to build last week. Last month, Alex was building a Laravel app for habit tracking. You meant HTML reduces multiple space characters, new line, tab characters to one space character. Oh, right, yeah, that's true, yeah. It does indeed. Let's go and have a look at that page then. Yeah, I would expect that to look exactly the same whether the link was there or not, to be honest. I don't think it's link that's doing it. Didn't run the start command. Come on, boot, boot, boot. Let's go, let's go. There's always a big chunk of time in a live stream where you get stuck down a rabbit hole. Yeah, you're only going to get a space if you put them like this, maybe, I guess. But then it's going to format it and automatically Prettier will do that. So as long as there is a space there, it will put one in. And Blitz would do the same with the link tag. Oops. Error. Oh, because you can only have one child in there. So then if we put that there, have space again. Yeah. I think it deletes all characters, doesn't it? I don't know. In between HTML tags, it doesn't often leave a space. I guess Prettier might be removing it for me, and I've been using Prettier for such a long time that I'm used to it now. If it needs a space, it does that, which is ugly, but it does mean you get a space left, a trailing space, which works all right. Anyway, where were we? So let's go. I'm going to quickly log in again just for the fun of it. Make sure it still works. Oops, password, login, done. Okay, we're in. Everything's working. You can see there's the input and the output is apparently null. Okay, that's a little bit worrying. Okay, don't worry about that when it becomes a problem. So, I was thinking about building the habit tracker app that Alex worked on last month. But then I started thinking about what was important about that stream, and it was setting up the relationships, having objects to work on, and in fact the interesting difference between how Laravel handles many-to-many relationships and how Prisma does is interesting and worth pointing out. I have an app. Wow, this one's a bit hectic. I might skip this one. Chipsel's usually good. So I was going to build an app that basically something that has a many-to-many style relationship, but a project that I want to build for an app I am working on is I'd like the users to be able to, in the dashboard that they log into to use the app, be able to contribute feature requests or change requests or bugs, I guess, report bugs, in a friendly way that isn't a GitHub issue queue or an expensive startup SaaS product, which they all seem to be now. It's like, oh, you want to get some user feedback? Well, that's going to cost you $15 a month. And when I only get, 2 or 3, less than a handful a month, I don't really want to be paying $15 a month for it. So I opened up Figma and threw together this little wireframe. This isn't a design because we'll do the design using Tailwind defaults. I'm going to build a list of products. This is why we made a product model earlier, with a title and a description. A user will be able to make a product, and then users will be able to sign up on that product, post requests. They might be feature requests, change requests, fix requests, something like that. And then other users of that product can come along and upvote the requests. So the upvote bit here is the many-to-many relationship, similar to the habit tracking tag to diary relationship, where a diary could have many tags and the tag could be on many diaries. In this case, a user can vote for many features, and a feature can have many votes. And the votes will be recorded over time, so we can see a history of how popular they are over time, and then use the ranking to maybe do some, I haven't thought about how the algorithm would work, but figure out, oh, this has got 10 upvotes, but only over the last 3 months. This other one was created yesterday and already has 10 upvotes. It should probably be at the top. So that could be quite fun. I don't know how far we'll get with that, but this is the gist of the idea. It's a little different to the habit thing, but hopefully we'll check off many of the same boxes, and at the same time I can build a few modules that I actually want to use in a real app. So 2 birds with 1 stone in a way. So we've got 30 minutes left to go. What I'm going to do, now we can't build this basic UI with Tailwind because it's broken, is just mock out some of the models that we're going to need. So this in mind, let's open up the schema and we'll go and have a look. So we've got a product. The name is Product Panda, which is kind of a bit of a joke name because Alex and I years ago worked on a product for form analytics called Form Frog. And of course, Firefox is a famous browser, and there does seem to be a bit of a trend of picking an animal and picking a word that starts with the same letter. However, after thinking about it, I wish I'd actually gone with Product Panther, because Panther's a lot cooler, and the purpose of this is to streamline your app, right? Like a panther. Alright, no. Yeah, you're right. Terrible. Disagree, Panda's better, because it's sillier. Product Panda, Product Panther. There's not a lot in it. Product Possum. Product Name an animal that begins with P. Okay, well maybe that's a vote for next week. Product penguin. Amazing. Yeah, so perhaps we'll have a vote on that on the Twitters. Is it product penguin, product panda, product panther, or a wild card? Product... don't know. Yeah. Is there a way we can tie the animal that we choose with the action that is an upvote? Is a panda more likely to upvote, or is a penguin? Would a penguin flap the feature? This is just too silly now. Okay, no penguins, no penguin flapping, please. Right, let's check where we're at with our changes. What did we change in the package? They all apparently got updated at some point. Oh goodness me, they look correct though. 6.51, they're just in a different order, so that's fine. That's fine. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. And let's delete that, so let's... recipe fail. Post, okay. Add no recipe, because we failed to do that. But never mind. So I'm going to define this data model, and then I'm going to go crazy and install Cypress and write a test for sign up and login. Because once I start building forms these days, I really hate manually clicking into the form, typing in the test data, submitting the form, seeing what happened. I much prefer to write a Cypress test once and then just let that run in the background while I change the code, and then in every second and a half it can fill in the form, hit the button, fill in the form, hit the button, fill in the form, hit the button, which saves me a lot of time. So I'll show you how I do that. But first, let's have a look at this model, since that's what we've started. Close that, close that. So a product, what's missing on here? We've got a name, which will be our... oh no, these are the features. So a product just has a name and it has a description. And a product will be owned by a user. So a user can have many products. You can create a product if you want. Oops, no, product array like that. And you'll remember from last week that that sets us up with the user on the product and the user ID that it's attached to. It's very cool. And then a feature or a request. They're going to be requests, not features. So we'll add that. We'll copy the ID stuff and the dates down so that it has all of those things it needs. We will now grab, we'll also have a name and a description on a request. Or maybe we want a title. Do we want a title or a name? Ooh. Let's go with title because it feels correct, more correct. And we'll worry about the voting relationship later. So we've added those things to the schema. We're now going to use the Blitz command line tool to Blitz migrate. Oh no, Blitz DB migrate to migrate the database to match those changes. And we added product and feature. Feature, that'll do. Oh no. Did I delete some stuff in here? Oh, it's not a, it is a product. Added the required column description to product table without a default value. There are 3 rows in this table. It is not possible to execute this migration. Because it needs to be optional if it doesn't have a default value. That's why. Oh nice, the names are still coming in. Pandas are cute. Penguin, peacock, parakeet, parrot, partridge, peccary, pelican. Puma is from the panther family. That's true. That's true. Puma's good. Product Puma. No, that's a bit of a mouthful. I still like Panther, you know. Panthers are cool. Panthers are kind of seem quite badass. So basically these all need to be optional unless... Well, their name isn't optional there. Why isn't that a problem? Required column description. Alright, well, I mean, those can just be optional for now. Let's try it. Make values. Make properties optional. Da -da 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 -da. Oh, it worked. Interesting. Okay, so that's one to check out for next time. So we've added those, and let's check that that created what we wanted. So we've got a request, and we've got a product now. Cool. And a request will always be on a product, won't it? So a request will always be associated with one product. Like that. Requests, whoops, that'll be a requests array, because a product will have many requests on it, hopefully, or hopefully not. Product Python, yeah, that's true. That one might be a bit language specific though, I suppose. Product Peacock, that would be the funniest one, I think. Then we can have like a big fan of like a peacock tail as the logo, with all its iridescent colour. Beautiful. Alright, what's the time? So we've got 25 minutes or so to go. I've got one mouthful of coffee. Didn't make it anywhere near as far as I was hoping today, but that's okay. We've added our migrations for the basics of that. We've set up now the product and feature relationship. That should kind of do it, right? So a request belongs to a product has many requests and belongs to a user. I guess a request belongs to a user as well, really. A user can have requests too that they've submitted. So that'll be a request array. We'll save that, come down here and check that that's set up properly, make that lowercase. Okay, so that's our basic model. So let's Blitz DB migrate that. So we added relation product and request relations. I'm not describing these very well, but it'll do for now. You know, cool. So I'm going to commit that. Add product and request models. Run the pre-commit checks. Cool. And then get push origin main, which will run the tests. Not that we've written any, but we might do that next time. User model breaks single responsibility principle. Ah, that's a valid point. Perhaps that's an exercise for suggestions for people of how we would change it. I'm very much doing this off the cuff, so appreciate your suggestions, Hamza, by all means. And bearing in mind we might change some of or all of this later to highlight how Prisma's changes work. But yes, valid point. But I would be interested to know how you do it, how you would do it, Hamza. And we will crack on with that next time. So that's the gist of what we want to build. We may change the model, but for now, that's the gist of it, you know. And for the sake of this simple app, we might not worry about it too much. So is it running over here? Let's have a look. It is running. And we can go over here and have a look that it still works. So this might be another dead end, but I'm going to install Cypress. Oh, of course it has. We're not in NPM land here. And for this, I'm going to need to nip over to the Blitz repo and potentially copy some setup from the examples. And this is why we want the recipes to work, because it would be really nice to just be able to do so I'm going to do npx Cypress open. Now it's installed, which should do an initialization process and configure us a default file in there somewhere. There it is. And in here, I'm just going to put base URL is http://localhost 3000, which is where we're going to load all of our stuff. And then I'm just going to hit run all specs and see if the example integration tests work. So anyway, I find this mesmerizing sometimes. So I was just sort of sitting there watching the ticks. But we'll stop that because it looks like that works just fine. I'm going to go up here into this new Cypress directory, and I'm going to delete all of the examples in this directory. Like that. And I'm going to flip back over to here, and I'm going to copy... Oh, the music crashed for some reason. Start that up again. Enter the temple. And I'm going to steal a couple of setup files from Brandon's defaults. So I'm going to copy all of these and then delete some of them. New file, login.spec.ts. Paste those all in there. I am going to delete everything but those top two for now. Okay, there's a few other little setup things we need. Is this file here, which does these reference types for Cypress kind of get us out of the woods for using Cypress things in our files. So now this won't be complaining about describe or CY or anything like that. I'm going to flip back to support and open that. And in helpers, I need to create a helpers file. Oops. Helpers.ts. I'm going to steal a simple function here from Brandon to create a random user, which, as you can see, just generates a random number and then uses test_random number example.com with a password _random. Nothing too fancy there. And there's a command that I'm going to copy. And we can delete all of that in there. It's just comments for setup. And I'm going to copy this. So this is a Cypress command, which it's going to complain about in the UI for some reason, but we won't worry about that too much. What this does is it adds the ability to call cy.signup with some values, and it'll execute these 4 steps, which is to type in the fields and click the button. And we will see that back over here. So random user is there. So those should now be running. Let's click here and see what happens. Loads the page, goes to the login page. Oh, that broke. I wonder why that broke. Because login has no spaces in it. So now that'll rerun. Goes to the sign up page, goes to the login page. Cool. So those work. Nice. So let's hide that. Let's see what we got here. So I'm going to change these like this, because I quite like being as case insensitive as possible so that changing case doesn't affect whether the test passes, because generally changing something from title case to sentence case shouldn't really pass or fail tests. So just use simple regex with insensitive characters. So I'm going to just reuse these tests because why wouldn't you? It makes a lot of sense. So add this one in, allows the user to sign up. So we're going to create the random user, call cy.signup with the user, and then check that we get redirected back to the home page and that the page contains a button called logout. It does. Awesome. I'll change that to be case insensitive as well in case we stylistically decided to make the button lowercase logout for some reason. That shouldn't affect the test. We'll do the same for this one, which is going to do some other stuff. So it's going to sign the user up first, go through all the stuff. That's going to fail there because that's incorrect. I'll change that while I'm here. Change that while I'm here, just because. So you can see here we're doing finding contains email, finding the input, and then typing in the user email. So when the contains search, we'll be finding something that contains email, which in this case will be the login form. And then I'm guessing these are marked up with the input inside the label, which will mean that, where is it? Take me there. Yeah, so because the input's inside the label, we can find the label with email and then find the input inside there. I wonder if these will work. See what I get. Yeah, we'll have a look at the testing library Cypress stuff soon. In fact, let's have a quick look at that now. Because it adds a bunch of useful stuff to the mix. Like this. Which allows us to do stuff like find by text on a button or find by role, which becomes really useful for finding labels. So I can find a label and use that to identify all the stuff. This is a way of making sure that the testing reflects, especially the integration testing with Cypress, reflects as closely as possible the user, the way that a user would use the application. So what this is doing is effectively where a user would come in and say, oh, I want to log in. Okay, there's the login button, let me click it, and then be like, okay, I want to type my email in. There's the email form, let me go to that one. Because labels and inputs are linked, and it would break accessibility if they were not, instead of just finding things called email and trusting the HTML, the document model, to be in the right structure to find your stuff, you can actually switch it out and find things by the role, just like a user would. The user's looking for a field labeled email to put their email address in. So if you can do that in your tests, it makes your tests far more representative of what a user would do, rather than going in and just going, find an input, use the placeholder, or, you know, I mean, a user might use that as well, but the label is also then allowing you to test the accessibility at the same time as your functional test, which I think is quite cool. So that'll work now indefinitely. We can always run those. What would be a quick thing to do for the last 10 minutes? Well, now we've got those running. Find by role is same as role HTML area attribute. Yes, exactly that. So find by role allows you to, especially for things, you know, things that should have a role. And then if someone comes along and changes the button to a div, for example, the test would fail, because, you know, in many ways that would fail. Fail for screen readers and things. Okay, so that's probably plenty for now, although I guess we might as well just change these while we're here so that they all pass. Delete that, change that to login so that it works. Let's check the session stuff works. Oh, were the views, were the views there? I can't remember. Let's have a look. Did it include views when we were logged in? We're about to find out. Skip on Windows. No, fail, fail, fail. Okay. Allows the user to sign up. Did it not redirect? Looks like it didn't redirect for some reason. Okay. Well, for now, we can leave these out. We'll add those back in another time. But these top three worked, didn't they? They did. Okay, so we'll kill that for now. We'll add Cypress to our commit messages. Okay, yeah, thanks Alex. I'll have a proper look at some point and fix it. But for now, I'm just wondering if in the next 8 minutes I can get these to successfully run in GitHub Actions. Just because I like to torture myself. Now I'm going to also use Brandon, I keep saying Brendan, it must be so offensive. Brandon's examples, because guy knows what he's doing. So I'm going to go back up to the examples. I'm going to go into the auth example, and I'm going to have a look for. Actually, no. It's going to be in the top level, isn't it? Because it's in the GitHub folder, in the workflows, in the main.yml. So go back to my project, go to actions, make a workflow for myself. I'm going to delete all the jobs, and I'm going to come over here and copy some of the stuff that I want. In fact, I'm going to copy it all and delete and change the stuff that I know is wrong. So this is cheating. We don't normally just copy and paste stuff on these streams, but that's okay. So what's going on here? So using Node with this version, we might want to upgrade that. Setting up the yarn cache. This all complicated, annoying stuff. Looks like there's some Windows specific stuff that I would never have even thought about doing. Run yarn install, run yarn lint. Is that going to work? Do we have lint set up? Do we have a lint command? Yep, we do. Cool. Build and test packages. So we don't want to test those because we don't have packages. Let's get rid of that. I'll rename that to just build and test. Build and test. Ubuntu and Windows. We might as well run it on Windows if we can, because we can. Does the setup, this is all the same. Does the yarn npm yarn install. Ubuntu does yarn build, and then yarn test only example. So we don't have that. And then run CI equals true. So we're going to need one other thing down here, which is database URL for Prisma. And that's a string, which is going to be file : dot / SQLite.db. That bouncing around is really annoying. What's wrong with that? And then make it correct. Wow, that auto editing thing is really strange. Really strange. Okay, cool. So this yarn test only examples is not going to work. We need a we need two more things. We need to change this to be yarn test CI. So we'll add a CI command. I'm going to add that now, commit that just to main. And I'm going to add test:/CI here, and I'm going to go over to the examples. No, wrong repo. Examples, auth, and into the package.json in here, and I'm going to steal two things. I need to yarn add cross env and start server and test packages and make them dev dependencies. Yarn add, sort that out, and then basically we're going to do this. Oh, can I insert there? What's going on? That seems to have broken things a little bit. Weird. Whoa, what's happening? Vim mode is broken. There it goes. Okay, that was weird. Oi! Okay, comma at the end. This is the test CI command. That's the test start command. So, the test start command is going to run Blitz DB migrate, Blitz start in production mode on port 3099. I'm going to change that to 3000 because our base URL in Cypress is 3000. And then it's going to run cy run. So we actually want to run Cypress run. We want that command as well. All right, let's see if that actually works. So yarn test:/CI. So in theory, this is going to build the app, start it in production mode, and then run Cypress tests against it on a command line. Looks like it's going well so far-ish. It shouldn't be checking those files though, that's wrong. But okay, they passed, fine. Hey, all good, okay, fine. Oh, so Cypress test pass and then it creates the production build? That seems like the wrong way around to me. I've probably configured these slightly wrong. What we got? Starts every test start. Great, test start runs. CY.run, steps run. No, looks okay. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Okay, so we'll add Cypress CI commands basically, and then we'll push that. Oh no, well, yeah, we do want to do that. Sometimes these pre-commit hooks can be a little delaying, but never mind. Oh no, what? To be does not exist on type assertion. Okay, so we've broken our Jest test somehow. Brilliant. Test.tsx. Well, there's always an easy way to fix that. Let's try that again. Oh, we're going to need to add everything. Add Cypress CI commands and disable the Jest test. Brilliant. Brilliant. Great, isn't it? Okay. Will that pass? Run tests. Okay. Running up against the clock now. We've got 1 minute. 1 minute to go. Okay, cool. Game on. Oh, now ESLint's failing. So this is where these things really come into their own, I suppose. Okay, I need to make that skip the commands directory. How are you doing that, Brandon? Damn it. Sorry, Brandon. I'm so bad at that. He's not going to watch this. It'll be fine. How do we get it to skip those? Is there anything in the Cypress file here? No. Where's the commands.js folder file? Oh. There we go. No? Reload project? Wait for the pre-commit hooks to run. Okay, so my command declaration is wrong. Oh, okay, that's because when you're like this, you need to export an empty module to satisfy the gods of TypeScript. So we'll add that. Satisfy gods of TypeScript. So close, you can feel it. All right. Run the test. Test is going to pass. No, test failed because we are not up to date. Because if you remember, we modified it to add our Git workflow configuration. Okay, so we'll just fine. That'll do for now. And push that back up. Run the test again to make sure that didn't break anything. Looks good. That's pushed. So now, can we end the stream with a successful GitHub action? Let's find out. I made main the default branch instead of master because many people in our communities find master to be a bit of a throwback to colonial times. And if people find that uncomfortable, I have no bones about changing that, basically. We don't need masters and slaves. We can use main and replica. And actually they're clearer terms, if you ask me, so that's why. Yeah. Main and replica are just as effective and don't carry the connotations. It is, yeah. But some of these words have a bit of weight behind them that we don't really want to carry with us into the future, so simple changes like that can make a big difference to some people. So since it makes no difference to me, I will happily go ahead and do it. Alright, so how are we doing here? It's running the linting. Fingers crossed it's gonna work. Did we modify the command name correctly in our main.yml? Let's go and have a look. Test CI, I did, yes. So looks like linting passed. So that's a good sign. So basically, if this passes, we will have got our Blitz app set up with all the basics. We'll have gone through the directory structure and had a look at how Blitz hangs together. We've used a bunch of the Blitz command line tools, such as migrate and those other things. And we've checked out the commands. Oh, and the build and test step failed. Let's just have a quick look why that is. Test examples. Cross-env not found. Oh no, did I not save the dependencies? Add cross-env and what was the other one? I have to look it up because it's a really long name that I can't remember. Start, server, and test. Start, server, and test. Save. Okay, so that's fine. We didn't save those, but now we should have a package.json modified. Yarn, the yarn lock didn't modify because it was already installed, so that's already taken care of. Install CI deps, that'll do. I think that's the second time we've used that commit, but never mind. Run the pre-commit hook and push to main. And now it's going to work. With a bit of luck, it'll work. Run the tests, push it up to GitHub, trigger the rebuild, and we should be good to go. I didn't think yarn required save. I think npm definitely does. npm requires save, yeah. I didn't think yarn did, but apparently it does. Assuming indeed that was the last commit. What the last commit contained, didn't actually check. Very well, did I? Yeah. So yeah, yarn no longer saves unless you say save. I thought it did. I'm not sure when that changed. But npm install definitely does require save, yeah. Right, so in theory, I think we're just waiting now for this to finish. And because it's never properly finished, we probably didn't cache node modules, so this step's probably going to take ages. Oh, and we changed although we didn't change the lock, although we did change the package. I don't know. Fingers crossed, eh? That was 2 hours, went quite quickly. It's a shame we didn't get to the Tailwind stuff. I was going to build the UI before doing this bit so that we could have something to test, but now we can build the UI with basic tests and make sure that we don't break anything. So that'd be cool. So we'll just let this finish. Maybe we can go and have a look at what the other things we did. So we've looked at all this. We've pretty much analyzed the package.json file quite. Now we didn't. What we didn't look at was Blitz DB Studio, which is basically a alternative to using a desktop app for browsing the database. So if I run Blitz DB Studio now while that's running, oh look, okay, so we've successfully built the project on CI. So there's our model, our schemas getting applied. There's the migrations running through a few times. I'm not sure why that's happening all those times in a row, but okay. Prisma client generated, no problems. Opening Cypress. So let's see, moment of truth, see if the Cypress tests will pass. Make that a bit bigger so it's easier to read. Yes. Types in the password, goes and visits the user, login. Cool, looks like it's passing. So now clean up. I don't think we've got any post task stuff in there. I don't think we added anything in there, did we? Yeah, game on. So now it's just going to run those on Windows, but I think we can probably assume that as long as the Windows specific stuff we copied is correct, that it's going to work there as well. So there we go. I guess we'll leave it there for today. So a quick overview of Blitz, quick overview of how you create models, although as Hamza rightly points out, we may need to think a bit more carefully about how this works. We'll revisit this next time. Hopefully by next week the Tailwind recipe will be fixed and we'll be able to get up and running with Tailwind. And then we'll actually start building the app. So that leaves us 2 sessions for the rest of the month where we will run through all of this stuff and create some kind of dummy buttons on the UI and then make clicking them do stuff. And it should be quite good fun. That's interesting, Hamza, that they've changed that in npm 5 because I frequently forget to do it and get caught out with the same issue, but maybe there's a configuration that I've saved somewhere that does that for me. Interestingly, Yarn, I'm sure Yarn used to do the save without --save and now no longer seems to, which is odd. Oh wait, did I do... yeah, I don't know. We'll investigate for next time. What I will just quickly show you is a surprise ending, which I seem to always do when it comes to these things. I've just ran Prisma Studio, which brings up this new web app here at localhost 55555 with all the models in our database. Let's have a look at a product. Ooh, look, we can browse our database here from a little web app. How cool is that? I can go and have a look at the product. Oh, I can go and have a look at the requests as well and see what's on there. All the values and their types. That's pretty cool, isn't it? So if you don't have any other software, you can just run this, which does the trick. Anyway, all right, I guess we'll wrap it up now. If you fancy stopping by, we'll be back next Wednesday, 8:30 British summer time. Don't think the clocks have changed by then. Good stuff. Nice one, Alex. Oh wow, thanks for the $1.99 donation. You are far too generous with your change. Overall great stream. Loved Cypress stuff and how you resolved conflicts in Jest, Cypress and CI. Product Papa. Great to hear, Hamza. I'm glad you enjoyed it. But yeah, feel free to drop me a message about the data model stuff. I'd love to hear how you would design it. I must admit, I haven't done a lot of data modeling lately. My back-end knowledge is years old now. I haven't done any Laravel work since probably 2014. Yeah, so I'm well behind on that stuff. All my work stuff, I'm told what the data model is at work, so I don't have to worry about it too much. Which is fine by me. Can't worry about all of these things. But yeah, let's have a chat about that. Maybe it's a good subject for discussion on the Discord. So I'll wrap that up now. Don't forget, if you like these kinds of streams, we're planning to keep these going for the rest of October. And in November, we'll have another subject switch. We might be using different technologies again to build a similar kind of basic apps, such as this. The idea behind them is deliberately to not go in prepared so that we're copy and pasting. It's to show the process. And if we copy and paste stuff, we go to the repo where we would copy it from in normal day-to-day work and copy the examples over and explain what we're doing and all of that sort of thing. So sometimes things do go wrong, but that's realistic. That's what it's like in real life as we figure these things out as we go. No one's done all of this before. No one is ever fully prepared unless they're doing the same things over and over again, and that just gets boring really quickly, doesn't it? And there's no innovation or profitable businesses coming out of doing lots of the same things again, unless you productize it, I suppose. Anyway, I'm rambling. If you like these kinds of videos, please do hit the subscribe button and the bell. We'll be doing this at least for the next 6 weeks or so. And we'll be back next week where we'll start on some UI and things like that. So thanks for watching, and I'll stop rambling. I will leave you with a link to Norfolk Developers' Patreon page, where if you like these things even more than just subscribing, you can pay money to support the community. And do feel free to jump into the Discord, find Norfolk Developers on Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn, or indeed visit norfolkdevelopers.com. All right, I will leave you there, and I'll see you next week. Thanks a lot.